lot of fun today.
Yes. Thank you, Reverend Margaret Morgan. And isn't really it about having a good time in life? Really. I'm here to lighten up. You know, lighten up in every way. So this September always, to me, is like a new beginning. Like some people do January. September always feels like the new year to me. So the teachings here are based on Science of Mind by Dr. Ernest Holmes. So Science of Mind is, it really is such a wonderful practical teaching that when it is practiced to its fullest extent, leads to a life rich in meaning, and joy, and peace, and love, and friendship, in all areas of our lives. So during this entire month of September, we will expose, no, we won't expose, well, we can expose too, but we'll explore while we're exposing to ourselves what it feels like to really be living in this, with spiritual principles as our spine, our backbone, sort of the center of our being, our true selves. So in order to fully engage in spiritual living, we must first become aware. And I just don't mean, no, first we have to become awake. Then we become aware. You have 3 points to this talk this morning. So to be awake would be the first one, and I know that we're all, I don't see any eyes closed, so, and that usually means that we're in deep meditation. So if you see people with their eyes closed, they're really, they're just taking it in with their soul, like I do. But if they snore, then you know. Anyway, we're here, the first step then is to be awake, to be spiritually awake. And a lot of us really haven't even tapped into what spirituality really means to us and is to us in our lives. That's what we really want to get to, beginning this morning and finishing the whole month. And then second, we want to become aware of whatever changes may need to be made in current systems, conditions, ways of thinking, doing, exploring, all those things, and by willing to make them or stand for those changes. And as Denny so beautifully in the prayer and the reading spoke about, yeah, let me get a cup of coffee first before, you know, just that's a huge shift. And then go into a spiritual practice, which is connecting him to his spiritual self. He's living a spiritual life by that choice, of let me go meditate before I reply. So being both aware and awake to the higher truth and aware of what needs to change in our physical world, that can sometimes feel like we are walking, it really does, a delicate line. There is an art and there is a science to doing this, to being the spiritual being which we are, having this human experience which we're having. Is a fine line, but there's a way to blend them both together. And today we begin the walk by one, looking at what it really means to be awake, looking at number two, looking at what it really means to be aware, and number three is putting them together and see how they lead us to fully engage in living a spiritual life. So let's explore a little bit about being awake. Millennia ago, which means 1,000 for all of you who don't know, I looked it up. I love the dictionary on my app on my phone. Millennia ago, there was a man who had a powerful message for the world. Kings bowed down to him, and people couldn't comprehend, couldn't wrap their minds or their heads around this being. So they came to him and asked not, "Who are you?" but they asked, "What are you? Are you a god?" "No," he answered. "Are you an angel?" "Nope," he replied. "Well then, who are you? What are you? What are you?" And he simply replied, "I am awake." His answer became the name by which he would be known throughout time. For awake is what the word Buddha means. That's taken from Sanskrit. Buddha means awake. So Buddhism, a religion that I'm sure most of us have heard of, is practiced by millions of people across the globe. And it all began with one man who woke up. The shift that is wanting to take place in humankind, that is needing to take place in humankind, could only happen when we, and as we, also wake up. And to what is it, though, that we need to awaken to? We need to awaken to the higher truth. And that's with a capital H and a capital T, which means divinity. A higher truth. Living in a higher state of awareness. Awaken to the higher truth of any experience we might be having. And are we not all having experiences? If you're in this room, you're having some kind of experience. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. We must awaken to the fact then that there is so much more going on than meets the eye. We think, therefore, therefore we have stuff happening in our lives, right? Because of our thoughts. So things are always going on. We must be awake to the idea that whatever is going on, whatever the experience is, that there is God's infinite presence right there in the midst of it, always supporting us, always guiding us, fully and completely. And I can't tell you how this has changed my life. Just this awareness, to awaken to the truth that I'm just not all these conditions. There's so much more to me than that. And that goes for everyone. As Denny said, no one left out. We're all one. We have this illusion of a separation. But we must be awake to an idea that whatever is going on, whatever the experience is, that presence is always guiding us. There is a divine plan. A modern New Thought mystic who made his transition into the next dimension only a few years ago, Walter Starkey, wrote a book called It's All God. And he addressed the issue of being spiritually awake to the higher truths beautifully in his book. So I want to share some of these wise words. It's All God is the name of the book. As long as we judge in terms of good and bad, we have to perform some pretty fancy mental footwork. When we try to make what we see with our eyes conform to a belief, this is the tricky part, that God or Spirit is always loving, omnipotence, the only power. God or Spirit is indeed the only power, he writes, because Spirit is the only cause, first cause. But just as the dark only exists in the absence of light, Spirit can appear to be destructive or creative, depending on how we judge appearances. And in order to understand God as the Spirit of love, we have to believe that there is a divine plan at work. No matter how the appearance seems to be, love is the only spirit or presence. Yes. We hear it all of the time, and now to incorporate it into our thinking, to really start believing it. And this is where double thinking is required. Because we're having this human experience, but in truth, what are we? What are we? We came through, we will leave. We are beautiful eternal spirits of the oneness. We are. That is the truth of our being. So he continues, it is insulting to our intellect to see our inhumanity to one another, or the unequal circumstances we are born into, and say there is no wrong. At the level of appearances, wrong does exist and needs to be dealt with. However, big however, we must simultaneously realize there is another level at which God or Spirit is the first and only cause. When that level is realized, the hypnotism of duality is broken, and appearances are healed in seemingly miraculous waves. This is so good. I just want to read a little bit more from him. But you see how there's two things going on at the same time in each and every one of our lives. We are all having some kind of experience, but at the same time, we remember. It's like well, the hurricane didn't come. He has an eye in the middle of it, thank you. Eye in the middle of it that is calm. And so we have to remember that, like the hurricane, with all the stuff going on in our lives, there is at the very center of our being a complete peace, a calmness. It's there if we but turn and recognize, become aware, first of all, that it even exists. So where was I? I'm still reading him. I have been studying with the mystic, and maybe some of you have heard of Joel Goldsmith, incredible. For some years, when one day I finally confronted him, I said, Joel, if you tell me that sickness, poverty, and such are not powers at some spiritual level, all right. But to me, as a human being, they are powers. He answered, precisely. And if you want to stay a human being under those laws, help yourself. But you don't have to. At that moment, I saw that it was up to me. If I allow my spirit to be negative and destructive, that is the law I am creating for myself. But it doesn't have to be. I do not have to be a victim or of either ignorance or the spirit of negativity. I can wake up. It is my choice. I can wake up. It is my choice. We are always at choice, except no one ever told us that. We're the first to find out at some point if we're lucky. If we're lucky. It is our choice to make up to this, to make up and to choose the higher way of being in the midst of the conditions, because the stuff is going to happen. That's part of our human experience. Stuff happens. In Rabbi David Cooper's book, which is a great book, God is a Verb, he writes, one of the primary texts of the Kabbalah cries out to humankind saying, you beings on earth who are in deep slumber, awaken. It pleads with us, stop sleeping, wake up. What are you waiting for? What are we waiting for? Ernest Holmes, in Science of Mind textbook, writes, we can sit in the shadow or move into the sunshine. Sitting in the shadow, we may not really believe that there is any sunshine. Sometimes feels like that. Really? There's light at the end of this tunnel? But the sun, Holmes says, but the sun would be there all the time. And all the time, we are in bondage. The real freedom exists. It is there, but we must awaken to it. So waking up to the truth of this limitless potentiality that is available to us in every second, every moment of our lives is huge. So you can see how that awakened state is so important to achieve, to really tap into, to believe. Waking up to this truth is definitely an art, because in our world ruled by our five senses, this doesn't make any sense. And you think of spirit, it really doesn't. It's invisible. Yeah, right, that's all that, you hear people say, all that rainbow and what is it, lollipops and sunshine. Yeah, okay, so I can't see it. That's fine. I can still hold that truth, because who is more at peace? The one who turns within, or the cynic that negates it in their own consciousness? It doesn't have anything to do with me. It has, what other people do has nothing to do with us. We know this, right? I hope we know this, because try to control someone. That's what I say. I get put in my place fast enough when I do. So when does art have to make sense? Never. Art doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to. It's a thing of beauty. So today, let us wake up to this truth that within us is a power for good. So being aware. Millennia ago, you know I like that word now, a rich and pampered, sheltered, wealthy young man by the name of Siddhartha Gautama awoke. He awoke and became the Buddha because he became aware of suffering, of poverty, and of sickness, and he wanted to do something to alleviate these human conditions. It is now our time. This is our time to become aware of conditions that must be alleviated. And I'm sure that not too many of you have seen Edwene Gaines, maybe a few. She's a trip. She's like the prosperity queen. Oh my God, she's incredible. Drives a gold, I saw it, a gold Cadillac. She's absolutely amazing. Anyway, Edwene Gaines' wisdom on this topic is this. She says, in order to live on purpose, we must become aware of an issue, problem, concern that we are absolutely passionate about fixing, solving, rectifying. And then get about doing that while at exactly the same time realizing there is absolutely nothing that needs to be fixed, solved, or rectified. That is being aware of the condition while being awake to the truth. As Edwene Gaines, she's amazing. It seems paradoxical. Life is paradoxical, is it not?
Sure.
Even inconsistent, and it feels inconsistent with those who are very deep into the law of attraction. Because even as we get to the contrast of what we want and what we don't want, in the law of attraction, which I know we have someone here that really is very into that. Well, I'm very into that. I just finished a class on it, but that law of attraction says if we focus on what we don't want, then we're going to get more of that. But what we create more of that needs to be changed. And I get that, but I believe we have a responsibility. Listen to this. We have a responsibility as fellow travelers. We're all in this together. Fellow travelers on this planet to support one another, to care for one another, to remind one another. So we become aware of something that needs to be changed at a very human level, and then stand in the truth about it and work toward the truth, not wallow in the mire of the condition. I think that is where we can all get into, if you will, spiritual trouble, when we get stuck in the hell of it and we stay there for way too long, when there's always those little steps we can take out of it. So it's fairly easy, tell me if I'm wrong on this, to get mesmerized by the condition and want to stay there longer than we need to. Simply because we identify with it. So that needs to be what our work is about. Moving out of the condition by turning within. So it's fairly easy to get mesmerized by that condition. And Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham, talks about the importance of contrast. And I always love the Abraham material. Contrast. It versus not it. Sometimes we need to experience, in fact, all the time, we need to experience what we don't want in order to learn what we want. We don't even know what we want unless we know what we don't want. So that's the law of attraction, and that's the contrast that is so valuable for us to really understand. What feels like awfulness and horror is the thing we don't want. But by recognizing it and knowing that this too shall pass, it always does, it's a condition, then we know what we want, and we can hold that in our vision while we're going through that whole experience. So the third part of the talk is put into action, that action part of being awake and aware. And now, we are going to put into action being awake and aware ourselves. So I want you to pause for a moment, each and every one. Pause for a moment. And I ask you to think about a life condition right now. Bring it into your mind's eye. Is there a circumstance or a condition, an experience in your life or the world at large that you would like to become aware of? That it is not it? Isn't that not it? You really don't want? That is causing you concern? Is there something happening that may be keeping you up at night with worry and concern? Taking a lot of space between your ears, constantly thinking about it? If so, just know that it's part of our human experience. It's okay. We are hardwired for anxiety. And when I first heard that from Martha Creek many years ago, I was like, really? No, seriously, I thought not everybody had anxiety. I thought I had this whole condition of high anxiety. Well, I do, but it's a condition. We're all hardwired. Our reptilian brain for fight or flight is hardwired for anxiety. So we got to be gentle with ourselves. It's hard enough to get through life anyway. But at the same time, it's a joy to get through life. You see, at the same time you can hold both. So anyway, you have something right now, just for a moment, bring it into your awareness. And awaken right now to the higher truth that's going on right in the middle of that condition that each one of you has right now in your life. And we know that as we become awake to these higher truths and bring them into the situations that we are aware of, then the situation must change. We're not giving it as much power. It must change. That's the science of how it works. Or as Mary Morrissey likes to say, it's physics, not philosophy. This is something that is scientific. That's the science. Science of mind is a science, it's a spirituality, it is a philosophy, and it's a religion, because there is a God involved, the God of your understanding. So it's a science. And when we awaken to these higher truths, we not only support our transformation, but, my friends, we support the transformation of the human collective consciousness. It's not just us. It's that critical mass theory. Just being a little bit more awake. Or you can consider it like this. What happens when you strike a match? There's a critical point when there's just enough friction that will cause a spark to spring forth and a fire that wasn't there a moment ago to burn brightly in front of you. It's the same with humankind. As we move into a new era of consciousness, and you can feel this consciousness that's growing right now, everywhere. It's a human thing. I mean, it is the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness that we're all in. But there's a shift taking place right here, right now. And it doesn't take all of us to bring about the change. This is the good news. It takes just enough of us who wake up and become aware of the innate desire to live in the world of peace, freedom, and joy. So the 100 monkey theory. Just that critical mass affects the whole. It affects the whole. Science, physics, which I don't understand, but I know that the law works. The law of God is always working as we use it. Think it, and so it is. It's the same with humankind. One moment we may be shuffling through the shadows, and then suddenly, in the next moment, an inspired person brings about a new belief, a thought, utters a word, you feel a vibration, and it changes everything for you instantly. This can happen. It happens all the time. It's a simple act. The human the human race reaches a critical point, just like the match. A spark of light flickers. There's hope for humanity. We must hold on to that hope for humanity, because we are the lights when we choose and become aware of that internal and eternal flame within us. So I want us right now to close the talk with a prayer that I got off of the internet. It's an offering from the Vision Alignment Project. That's where millions of people through the internet get together and hold prayer for visions. So this is the vision for the human spirit. Okay, so I want us all to take a deep breath and just relax, close our eyes, and become awake to these words. We see a world where the human spirit is blossoming in every land, in every relationship, in every business, in every home, in every heart and mind. We see a world where people have rediscovered the joys of life, where life itself has become easier, more playful, and where we flock to help one another when help is needed. We see smiles in every direction, because all humanity's burdens and debts have been lifted and put away forever. We see people excited about life, excited about their work and projects, excited about their homes, families, and communities, excited about the bright future that comes to those who really help and care for their fellow men and women. And above all, we see something happening that hasn't happened here for ages. Our spirits are shining just the way they were meant to shine from the time we set foot on this beautiful, blessed realm. And this prayer continues, just imagining and holding this vision for ourselves and our planet. We see a world where humanity as a whole has risen above all of the mundane dramas, scenarios, and realities that no longer serve us, where we have seen the light of a new day within. We now know that our wisest, most productive, most joyful course of action in all situations is to love each other, to serve one another, and to see everyone in their highest light. Thus, by this new course of action, we have en masse created peace, happiness, comfort, and safety for ourselves and for all living things who inhabit this earth. We all go there together. That is our intention for the highest good for all. And holding that intention in our hearts and our minds and our souls, we just say together, and so it is.
So it is.